If you're like me, you've been seeing or rather hearing about audio dramas, like Welcome to the Night Vale, The Magnus Archives, Limetown, and thousands more, cumulatively with hundreds of millions, if not billions of listens. So many things to be curious about. What if we could get someone who has an in-depth knowledge on audio dramas, a background in television, and is a huge freaking nerd? But we're in luck today because we're joined with Stephen Krueger. No relation to the other Krueger that's been on the show. Stephen is the creator of Subterra podcast, a sci-fi dystopian tale of survival. Today we're going to dig deep into audio dramas, making it with Star Wars, and ask a few fun questions like, who is the Mandalorian? If you like this type of content, please subscribe. We're putting out 2 to 3 new episodes every week, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you everyone thus far for liking, subscribing, and leaving comments. Let's stay curious, learn about Subterra, and the intense world of Stephen's creative mind on this episode of the Learning With Lowell show.
So you don't build this later, you don't take both sides and marry it.
Zoom separates into two. We're starting the episode. The Zoom separates. We're doing this in Zoom. And we're talking about podcasting. As everyone reading the title and the intro is going to know what we're talking about today. Well, Zoom separates the audio files into two, and then I like auto level them, and then I make them the same sound, like level, so it sounds like we're kind of in the same room. And that's all I do. So like Zoom separates the two tracks, but it also does stuff to the audio, which I'm not a fan of. That's why I want to go. I've tried out everything else out there, and I mean Zencastr, and there's a couple of them that are nice and all, but I just think for the cost it's a little weird. But then at the same time, I think OBS, which for some people it's like a streaming thing. So if you watch Twitch, that's what most people use it for. But I think there's a lot of really cool applications for podcasts that I've been exploring for the last couple of weeks and guinea pigging people on, and it would get a much better audio quality, I believe. But how did you record yours? Were you digital? Were you in a studio? Like, how did you record your podcast?
Before I answer that, what did you mean that Zoom does something to the audio? Like, what does that mean? What does that sound like? It just compresses it. It does some. Yeah,
it doesn't. It's not like when it doesn't sound like if you I don't sound as good going through Zoom. Like, it just does stuff to the audio to make it more whatever on their software side. If you were to record your sound and record it through Zoom, there is a distinct difference.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. If you want, I used to do my intros by recording on Zoom, and then I realized this fact, and then I went to other things. So if you record yourself just speaking into Zoom, or speaking into your phone on the other side of Zoom, and then look at the audio as you compare it to something that you did locally on your computer, it'll be different.
Like the waveform, like physically looks different.
Yeah, and it sounds different.
Oh, what are you up to, Zoom? What are you doing?
Well, they're not really designed for this type of thing. We're just kind of using it for it.
That's
like
true.
Bastardization.
Does anyone know who owns them and like where do they came from? And like every corporation on Earth 2 years ago decided we're just going to use this one platform to communicate. Like, does anyone know where this audio and video gets funneled through?
Like WebRTC stuff, like the actual software layer?
No, I mean like who owns it and like.
No, I don't know. I don't think about these things.
See, these are the things that I think about. It was for like years and years. I would be on conference calls before Zoom, and everyone was cheap, so they'd use 1-800 conference call free or freeconferencecall.com, and it was
before my time.
It was a free service. Well, I'm a seasoned veteran of lots of communication devices.
I've used Zoom or some form of Zoom for like the last 10 years.
Well, I think there's like these TV dinosaurs that I knew, and they would, we'd have a conference call, and I would midway through, I'd go, does anyone know who owns this company that we're all speaking into, and who knows who's
why
listening?
Does it? Yeah, I get, like, why does it matter? Like, there's no like privacy in this world.
I guess there's not. I guess why ban TikTok? Because we're jumping onto platforms who are like, hey, it's free, or you can talk on Zoom.
We probably should ban TikTok. We probably should ban it. Everyone listening that likes TikTok, it's a nice platform, but China's mining us, and you need to stop doing that. Apparently, they even deliver content differently to like people in China versus people in America.
I read about
this.
that.
I don't know if that's true though.
It's a great story, and I believe it because I read it, but I don't know if it's true. But I guess within China they have age limits, and if you're under a certain age, they push, if you're under 14, they push like science and STEM stuff towards you.
I heard this. And I got it from Joe Rogan. I don't know if it's real.
You got it from Joe Rogan?
Yes. I'm a fan. He's fun.
It's definitely not real.
Well, you got it from an independent source too. So I mean,
Yeah,
we're triangulating
I
something.
know. I know. I got it from some blog, and you got it from Joe Rogan. There's probably 75% of it is probably true, but they cut kids off at 45 minutes. That was what blew my mind.
They do that, and then they the content itself is different. Like ours is more dance and that type of thing, where theirs is like engineering. Like, oh, look at the cool stuff you can build.
Yeah, like I feel like the version we have here should balance the two. There should be, you want to watch dance, you want to watch Wednesday from Netflix, do the dance thing, great. But here's a video on quadratic equations. Like, it should be balanced, but the way they sell it to us, it is just like it's a slot machine. Just never stop putting nickels into it and keep pulling the thing. And yeah, I don't know if it's good, but I don't know if Zoom is good.
100%.
Who owns Zoom? Can anyone answer that?
I think it's owned by an American company, which gives, like, the thing with Chinese companies versus American companies that no one thinks about is that China owns those companies. Where in America, companies routinely flip off the U.S. government when they ask for stuff. Like Apple, it's like, hey, we want to backdoor into this product or whatever, and they'll say fuck you all the time. Versus China, it's like, no, we are, like, they're just built in, or they'll kidnap billionaires and stuff. Like, the U.S. government doesn't get away with stuff like that.
So to answer your question from 10 minutes ago, how did I record my podcast? I decided to buy a bunch of podcasting equipment because I am on a couple on the Kevin Smith network and sort of run my mouth and have fun. And I thought, oh, I could do this at home. So I bought some condenser mics and a mixer, and I put it into one of those Tupperware giant, things, those tubs where you keep all the stuff, and I
portable. Okay.
Yeah, like a giant storage tub, and I pushed it into my garage, and I went, great, that will sit there and do nothing. And it did for a while, like a year. And then the pandemic happened, and we were all at home. And I have a friend that I worked with in Texas when I lived there for a couple of years, and he's a screenwriter, and I'm more of like a TV guy. And we were knocking around an idea about, what did we call it? Game of Thrones in a bunker, like a whole caste system of characters who all live underground because the earth has turned to poison. And what would that be like? And we were like, making mood boards and coming up with the pitch. And we were going to go to so-and-so, and he knew that guy who made that huge movie. And we were sort of doing that, like that game. And then the pandemic happened, and everyone struggled during it, as did people who sell TV shows and sell movies. And so no one was buying anything. Like, no, there's no place to take this. And I said, well, what should we do? And he said, I don't know. And I said, oh, I've got that tub in my garage with all that audio equipment. Why don't we just scrap pitching it and just let's make it. Let's just stop doing what we keep doing, which is we know people, we go to them, we pitch them an idea, maybe they give us a little money, and it goes nowhere, So I said, okay, I don't know how to do, I'm not an audio engineer. I don't understand any of this. And so I just, sat on YouTube and watched tons and tons of videos, and we wrote a script, and I have an actor friend, and he's, records remotely. So we didn't all get together because you're not supposed to, because it's the pandemic. And I just kind of through sheer determination and will just made it. I taught myself how to edit. I taught myself how to write music. I mean, I have some idea about music, but I didn't know how to score anything. And there were all kind of things that I had done before in my profession, but I'm always removed from it. There's always a composer that comes in or does this, or there's a mixer that mixes it for you. And so I kind of learned to do all those things myself. And it was probably the single best creative experience of the past 10 years of my life. It was just so fulfilling and so interesting. And I have been proselytizing it ever since. You gotta make one of these. You gotta do it. It's so fun. It's so, it checks all the boxes that I wanted when I set out to do something creative. And there's no, like I said to somebody recently, Like I'm the one who gives the notes. I'm the one that says, yeah, this could be a little better. We could try this, rather than, some faceless person sitting in a building in Netflix, so many miles away, who maybe they spent 5 minutes looking at it and then maybe you should change this. Like it was just like this great sense of ownership and just unbridled creativity. So that's how I got into making scripted podcasts.
Yeah. What was of the equipment you had, what did you actually end up using that you'd actually recommend people check out?
I am currently, my voice now is through a condenser microphone, which are a little sensitive. I see you've got like a Shure, right? Is that Shure?
This is an Audio Technica. I have a condenser one over there, but it was irritating me, as we discussed.
Yeah.
This is Audio Technica, like 2100.
Yeah. It's cardioid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
That's sort of better for general purpose. Like a condenser mic picks up a lot of the high end, a lot of the low end, and a lot of helicopters flying over your house or cars, parking nearby. So it's very sensitive.
But you can hear trucks drive by when I've been using it in some of my episodes. You can literally hear a truck drive by, and it's like,
yeah, but you see, I like that. That's
like
authentic.
A quarter mile away.
Yeah, I know, but like I definitely know, like you're not in some fancy studio, that there's like 10 engineers. Like I know that you're a real person. You're really doing this from home. You really believe in it. So I like those little errors. I like those. Errors is the wrong word. It gives it a sense of authenticity.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, the guy that recorded the actor that I use that sort of narrates it and does the characters, he was recording at home in a very similar mic to yours, and he had his dogs near him. And a couple of times they ruined a take by shaking their head, and you could hear their collars kind of jingle in the background. And so to cover that, I built like a room tone, a soundscape of what this bunker sounds like based on that to cover it. So I found, like things with little tinkling sounds. And so you don't notice it, but his screw up became like the inspiration for the sonic design of the entire bunker. So,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So then
use everything.
So would you recommend that is my microphone or your microphone? Like, what's the ones that you recommend? And then the headset's pretty good. It's weirdly, it like cuts out a lot of background stuff, which I don't really understand why I would do that. But like
the headset, your mic, your
no. Whenever someone wears a headset, it's like it immediately makes it sound better.
Oh,
have you ever tested this? It's like weirdly better.
Yeah, I would recommend. I would
the actual quality
say,
of it, like not just the perception of it.
Yes, I think a condenser mic is a good place to start, but they're a little more expensive. So you can use a cardioid mic. You think you just need to get a little closer to it, and you just don't get the same amount of information. But again, it's dependent on the project you're embarking upon. And I didn't really have a choice. I bought these before I knew anything about microphones, so they were sitting in my garage in that tub. So these are the ones I used. And I think I could have recorded in a studio, but I did it at home. And when I did the second season, I had a friend of mine come in. He's an actor who you've seen in a ton of stuff. He works a lot. He's not famous, but you'd know him, and he works a lot. And he was kind of complaining. He says, I don't really get to act when I'm doing all these TV shows. Like I'm a puppet, stand here and move your hand right there and say your line looking this way and then turn and go here. It's very much like hitting marks and delivering a line, maybe a little bit of acting, maybe a little intention behind that. And then, move on. You're out. You're a prop almost. And he had such a good time. Like I get to act, I get to try things, I get to experience. And he would walk around where I am right now. This was the studio. He would walk around he would get into character, and he wanted to run into a scene. He's like, can I run up to the mic and, deliver my line? I said, absolutely. Like, who cares? Like, we're not, this is not costing us any money. So let's try everything. And I think I got some really good takes where he's like in the moment, and he's, like getting excited and running across the room and saying his line at the mic like he's saying it to someone. And I think what I liked about what I was doing there is a lot of scripted podcasts are recorded kind of like radio plays, where it's very like you could tell the person is just standing right on the mic and they're just delivering their line. It'd be great, but it doesn't feel like lived
like Welcome
in.
to the Night Vale.
Yes, exactly. It feels kind of radio playish. It feels a little like stilted. And what I liked was being able to like let the actors move around. I even watched a video of this horror podcast where they gave the actors hand mics and let them move around a set and feel it. You know, and it was funny.
What was the horror podcast?
I can't even remember that. But I was inspired strangely by this movie Rango, this animated movie with like Johnny Depp from 10 years ago.
Where's a lizard?
Yeah, he's a lizard. And it's a good movie, but how they recorded it. So they usually, when you record an animated movie, an actor goes into a studio and yells into a mic and they chop it up. And for Rango, they put lavalier mics on the actors and boomed them, and they let them walk around a set. So they let them like walk up to people and say a line. You know, if the action on the screen is Rango walks up to this person and says their line, Johnny Depp just goes into a booth and he goes, "Hey man, we got whatever Johnny. That's my Johnny Depp." And there's no action there. He's just saying the words, but he's not like it's not performative. It doesn't feel lived in. And so the way they made Rango was they let the actors basically put on a stage play and record the audio, and probably did a little cheats later and probably did some inserts. But it just, I thought that's so freeing for the actors who ordinarily are just kind of like, you know, you're recording voiceover. You're in a booth. Often you're not with other actors who are in the movie with you. And, you know, it's a sterile, cold, uninviting environment. But getting a bunch of actors on a stage and miking them and saying, "Don't worry about the audio. We'll get something of quality." Like my friend who wanted to like run up to the mic and say his line. It's not the best quality audio ever recorded, but like I'm not making a Pink Floyd album. I'm trying to like capture something emotional and real. And I found like that was one of my like, oh, you can do it like this with these mics. And I built a sort of soundscape underneath the world, broom tone, as they call it, that hid a lot of my mistakes. And also people are like, they're listening to podcasts while they're walking their dog or at the gym and their headphones. Like this isn't like a movie that needs to, you know, be in 3D and have blue people who swim underwater.
The second one was not very good.
It wasn't? I haven't seen it.
I'm not going to say anything then. I don't want to spoil it for you. The premise of the movie doesn't make sense. Like the whole like catalyst of why the whole movie happens does not make sense.
That's a problem.
Yes. Like honestly, if I met James Cameron, I'd ask him about it. It was like, well, his answer probably, I just wanted them to go swimming. So this is the closest I could get to a reasonable explanation. It's like, there's no way a leader of a war party leaves the war party from a bunker to go to a place where anyone could find them. Like it's just a dumb premise. Like no one would ever do this. I don't want to spoil anything.
It's yes. Spoilers. Whoever's listening who hasn't the one person on Earth who hasn't seen this movie yet. Oh, it's me.
Wait, I mean you're one.
Don't spoil it. Yeah, I'm one of them.
Yeah.
The first one didn't do much for me. I don't know. I thought
it was okay.
Remember.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was okay. I thought it was beautiful. That was about it. Also, just to like touch on the sound, because I've been listening to your episodes, and I also want to ask you like, why does the time variable? Why isn't it like 20? You know, like Welcome to Night Vale is like 20 minutes, but the sound, everything you're saying, I would not guess that's what you did because it sounds really good. I think there is an element of like that. There's probably some snooty, like one of those like owl-eared people. They're like, oh, they could have done like 3%, like there's like that 2% better or something. But the sound actually was really good. Everything you're saying right now, I wouldn't have guessed that. I thought it was like, you know, standard, you know, almost like in a booth quality sound for what was going on. Like it was very encompassing. I could imagine what was going on. It wasn't everything we're saying. I would imagine there'd be like a cost, like a trade-off, like a cost for doing it, and I couldn't hear any cost.
Yeah,
so there's
I think
like an effective noise level of noise quality that you captured very well.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I think you know, sure, if I had all the money and all the time in the world, I would have like a $50,000 microphone and like
But you didn't need it.
50 engineers, and we do 1,000 takes. But like, I was like, okay, I only have so much time, so much energy. And what was most important to me was like capturing something that connected with people and felt real and authentic and emotional. And I don't think you get that with like unbelievably crystal clear, perfect sound. And it's like a part of my huge issue with all of movies and television, where there's like this overemphasis on perfection in terms of the picture, the sound, the editing. And I'm like, I mean, I don't care. Like, when you think about movies that you love, you're like, did it sound good? Like, I don't even remember. Does Star Wars sound good? I guess it does.
Yeah, sounds great.
I mean, but
that's more the soundtrack. The soundtrack, like the ambient noises they move through things is kind of neutral. They hear them clang into stuff every now and again.
But there's like a stormtrooper hits his head and they left it in, and I know that drives George Lucas crazy, but I'm like, what I remember is like, oh my God, there's like looking up at, I remember seeing it as a kid and looking up at the sky and looking at the stars and thinking that's going on up there. Because I wasn't very smart as a kid. I didn't realize it was a made up movie, but yeah, but it doesn't have like lens flares like the new J.J. Abrams one. Like, those movies look better than Star Wars. Like Star Wars, there are moments.
The lightsabers do, yeah.
You can see into Darth Vader's. You can see his eyes. You can see the actor in there, which I know later they've gone and painted out. But I found online somebody found a print from 1977 of Star Wars before George Lucas, before it ever went through telecine into video. Like, they found a print of it and they painstakingly scanned each frame, and you can find it on the internet. Obviously, it's not a Disney Lucasfilm release, and it's grainy. Like, they definitely color corrected many more times. I'm like, wow, is it grainy? Like when the robots are on the planet in the beginning, I'm like, oof, I forgot. Like, it looks so much better now. Like, audiences in 77 were like, huh. And Darth Vader's mask is all scuffed up. It's not like perfectly smooth, and you can see into his eyes. Like, I could see the actor in there, and I'm like, oh, they definitely went and did some correcting, but who cares? Like, it's Star Wars. Like, it has touched billions of people, and there are errors in it. There are, flubbed lines and, bad ADR and things that, like, I'm sure like a technical professional, like you said, an eagle-eared person or like a color timer will look at that print and go, oh, look at this. It's all, they've like pushed it a stop and it's all grainy. Who cares? Like, and it did what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to connect with people and make them feel something and bring them joy. So, there are those in the creative arts who put way too much emphasis on perfection, where I'm like, I thought Subterra sounded good enough, and
yeah, it's good
for people
not
that
even
are
just good enough.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not looking for technical awards. I want people to be like, oh my God, I was rooting. The best compliment I got was from a woman executive who's like, I don't like sci-fi, and I said, well, just listen to it, and she said, about the 4th episode, I was rooting for the dog. I was really like, go, go, go. And I'm like, oh, you connected with it. That makes me happy. So yeah, I don't know. Don't worry that your product, that your creative output is not James Cameron level. Only James Cameron can make a film for 13 years. Like, he's got that much money and that much clout that he can, shoot and shoot and shoot and whatever. Like, I'm sure the movie is visually perfect, but I've not met a person that are like, oh, it's a really good story. It really connects with you. And it sucks you in. It's like, yeah, you don't go for the story. I'm like, but I do.
The video quality changed at several moments. Like, it literally changed. I thought it was like my eyes were broken or something, because it would go from like, I don't know. I think someone said it was like one frame rate to a different frame rate, but you could feel it.
Yes.
It was irritating. It's like you put all this, like, I thought my eyes were broke. Like, I was like staring too much at the computer screen, because it was like 3 hour long movie. No, but yeah, apparently like there actually does shift. But I agree with your point. I think most people agree with it when they check out your. I hope everyone listening, gives it a try, because these aren't long episodes. Like I think the longest one's like 20 minutes and 30 seconds. Like they're pretty quick. Like, you can like listen to it like the whole season pretty fast.
Yeah,
So try it out.
They're
and
good.
It sounds great. Yeah,
they're good for a dog walking. And it's about a dog, so it's like kind of perfect to go take my dog out and listen to something and go somewhere else, and but yeah, I don't know. You were just talking about Cameron and The Way of Water. He does change the frame rate. It's like not 100. I think it goes to 48 frames in some of the action sequences, which was a kind of big thing a couple of years ago. Peter Jackson did The Hobbit, and he released it in some crazy frame rate, like over 100, which people were like, it looks weird,
well, he gets a pass. He didn't have enough time to, like, I don't know if many people know about the difference between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings for Peter Jackson. Peter Jackson had years to work on setting up Lord of the Rings for previs and all that other stuff. But for The Hobbit, he was taking over for Guillermo del Toro, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
They gave him like 6 months. That's why if it's like, there's a famous Mark Twain quote. Sorry for the long letter. I didn't have time to write you a short one. That's why it's 3 movies. He didn't have time. He was just like laying the tracks. He was dead. And if you look at behind the scenes stuff, he looks dead inside.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, he was loving every moment of it. The Hobbit, I don't know. He looked like he was probably on suicide watch. Like, it was just so sad to see just the difference in passion and like how much it was grinding him.
I am currently going through Lord of the Rings for probably the 10th time watching them. I watched the extended cut because I think it's, why not? I
trick people into watching that.
How do you trick them?
I don't tell them there's a different one until it's done. They're just like, oh, wow, this is low. Well, this is really long. It's like, it's even in multiple discs. It's like, oh yeah, but it's really good. Where I was like, yeah, I just wish it was like shorter.
But I like the idea of this because I saw them in the theaters and I loved them. I loved, like, I'm like, this guy gets it. Like, it's epic shots and great action sequences, but the emotion like just anchors you after every, oh my God, that was a great scene where they're fighting X and Y. And then there's like, oh my God, I'm so sucked into, all of these storylines, and handles them beautifully. But I think it would have been tough to sit through another hour just as a moviegoer. And I like the idea of like, there's a movie cut and then there's a home video or streaming cut, because I love the extra stuff. It is such a richer experience. I just finished The Two Towers the other night, and I'm watching like an hour and a half in a sitting. And oh my God, like, just it's perfection. I don't think I've seen a better trilogy of movies. Definitely. I just went through the last 3 Star Wars, which, everyone has an opinion. I don't
like what they did to Luke. I don't know what your thoughts are. Like, Luke just doesn't make sense. Like, just, it's like his evil brother. Like, Luke literally redeemed a genocider. It's like he brought Hitler back. Hitler gets a pass, but his nephew had a bad dream, gets knifed in the night. Like, I just don't believe it.
It's just shocking to me that they had all that time. So Peter Jackson had his entire life to prepare for this movie, and you could kind of see little bits and pieces of Lord of the Rings and all his movies leading up to it. Like, he's a very talented guy, and then gets ready to embark upon this thing and sticks the landing like I've never seen. Gollum is one of the greatest characters I've ever seen on film. It's just so engaging. And then, Disney and George Lucas and Kathleen Kennedy have decades to get ready for the new Star Wars. And they didn't figure out, like, what's Rey's story? I don't know. She's a nobody. Oh, wait, no, she's a somebody. Like, it shifts from each movie as if they're just like writing it on the fly.
Apparently they didn't have an overarching plot or something. Like, Rian Johnson was given like, hey, this is, I don't know. I think it's when you open up Star Wars with a mama joke, you probably shouldn't be allowed to make film again. Like, it's Star Wars. Like, there's a reason why George Lucas had classical music so it'd be timeless pieces. And there's a movie in Star Wars where they open up with a mama joke for like 7 minutes.
Yeah.
You open up to a mama joke. Someone should kneecap that, man. It was I was like, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm seeing. I mean, I'll give things a try. I mean, the prequel series was like, okay. But then when you watch Clone Wars and Rebels and some of this like, ancillary content, it really brings it up. I don't know if you checked out the animated stuff.
I have. It's really good.
Yeah, the clones are just amazing.
And then I've been really disappointed, just as a fan and as a fanboy, with all of the Disney Plus shows. Yeah, the Mandalorian's fine, but it feels like something you would watch as a kid on Saturday afternoon on syndication. Like it just kind of feels like there's
a lot of murder.
They got to go to this place and get that thing by the end of the episode. Like it's very kind of like marching along, totally disconnected emotionally. Just sure, the little baby Yoda is adorable, but aside from that, it's like a Gilligan's Island. It's like we got to get over there, get those coconuts away from the natives. Like, what is this about? And I didn't even give the Obiwan Kenobi series a shot. Like I heard it's terrible.
It wasn't of the two series that came out, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Andor blew me away. I didn't really, I was like, well, I'm going to watch something that like the guy dies and it's like kind of a done thing. But then at the same time, that's basically Obi-Wan Kenobi. But I thought I was going to like Obi-Wan. I did not like it. But Andor, Andy Serkis, it was amazing. It was amazing.
So, and as I was building to Andor, and I'm like, you fooled me once, Disney, with this and that, and the Boba Fett one, the Book of Boba Fett. Like, shame on me if I'm going to go in again. And then it came out, and then this is like how we ingest content now. It comes out, and I'm like, nope. And then the blogs start coming, and then the video reviews, and like YouTube's pushing me videos. People are like, it's a masterpiece. It's really good. And then I'm like, I have a friend who's very, very high up at Disney. And I actually asked her, I'm like, are you cooking the books there on the internet? Are you paying people? And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, okay. Okay, sure. Disney has all the money in the world. They can make people write positive articles and put out videos. But it reached like a critical mass where I'm like, I got to watch this. Like, I didn't really even like Rogue One, or I don't even remember it. I was just kind of like,
It was okay.
Okay. Yeah, it's like, it's fine, but is this a Star Wars movie? And then I watched Andor, and it blew me away. It's incredible. And I think it goes down, it starts with the writing. Like, the characters are so memorable. That guy's mom, when he goes home, when he's been fired and he's living with,
I hate that mom.
This nagging woman, but she's my second favorite character in all of Star Wars. Like, oh yeah, I guess they have kind of annoying, naggy moms in this universe too. Like,
it felt very real.
Yeah, it's like it pushed aside all of the adventure and all of the like, Luke, we gotta get the TIE fighters off of us. Don't get cocky. Like, that's all great, and that's what Star Wars like exploded out into the zeitgeist with. Like, it's an adventure movie. It's a story that is pure entertainment. But like, beneath the surface, there's some interesting things, and George Lucas didn't have time to explore them because that was then and this is now. But like, Tony Gilroy has the time to explore like what's going on at the Empire, and like what's the bureaucracy like there, and what's someone who wants to get ahead, what is she pushing against? And I cared about the Empire. I mean, they're the bad guys, they're evil. I don't root for them, but it made me understand them, where I think the prequels and definitely the J.J. Abrams era of Star Wars, like, what are these people? What do they want? We'll rule the universe. Like, why? That sounds like a lot of work. The galaxy will be ours. Like, to do what? I always
didn't
wonder.
Even rule the universe either. They ruled like a very small segment of it. Like, the Outer Rim was run by like the Hutts and all these other people.
Yeah,
he didn't even succeed.
But I loved Andor. I cannot recommend it enough. Like, even if it's not solely for Star Wars fans, which I really appreciated. I was like, oh, it's not, like, remember that character, remember him. Like, it's just like the endless fan service, which like I get, but I just really appreciated that they didn't like, what's the South Park thing? The member berries, you remember this, Star Wars fans? Like, yeah.
Well, I think, I don't know where, I think I read this, where it feels like a sci-fi story that happens to be set in Star Wars. Like, it's just a story that's set in Star Wars. And that feels pretty cool. I know you wrote your podcast during the pandemic, and I think my favorite piece of content that came out during the pandemic is Stations 11, because it's about a pandemic that happens. So they're like, they have that added weight as they're making it, and it's a beautiful story, like how they use Shakespeare and all these other things to elevate like the themes of what's being talked about. I thought it was so beautiful. Like, I cried at the end when, like, Giovanni, nothing happens that I'm going to spoil. So people check it out.
Yeah, that's another one. That's like, everyone was telling me to watch it. I'm like, really? What is it? Is it really that good? Like, I've got to start listening to the market, when everyone is screaming, like, watch this. And I'm like,
I took the third episode before, like, the first two I was like, what the fuck is this? Third episode was like, okay, I see what they're doing. And then I like it now. But the first two was like, this is a weird way to tell a story. Kind of like, it's like, what's happening? We're in the past, you're in the future. People are dying, people are not. But now when I watch the whole thing, it's like, I like the first three episodes, but it took to the third episode before I really could appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't think you have that. I don't think a lot of shows have that luxury. Like, you have to hook people in the very beginning, and there's a whole like community poised at their keyboards, ready to bash you if you're not good. Like, oh, this show's trash, it's no good. Like, don't that's going on right now with HBO's Velma, the Scooby-Doo
I haven't seen
reboot.
It.
Yeah, well, everyone's just like, it's terrible.
They keep making TV series with like Nancy Drew or whatever. And I think it was Nancy Drew that they made a series about her, like, and I thought it was just gonna be about her solving crimes, but like the first like 40 minutes is her like having a boyfriend or something. It's like, I mean, women have these problems, but I wanted to see detective work. I wanted to see her be like Sherlock Holmes, like I think it's Enola Holmes or whatever, the second one, where like Sherlock Holmes is like this, like he's actually drunk and a coke addict a little bit. Like, no one ever shows that about Sherlock Holmes, but it's fun. Like, you have her doing her own detectiveness, like actual detectivery is happening outside of like the social commentary. But like, yeah, so I haven't really been watching. Anytime there's like a new female detective thing, I'm kind of like burnt because of the Riverdale and
Riverdale,
they had Betty
too.
they had a teenager doing a striptease in front of a bunch of old men. I was like, that's kind of weird. Or like the American football for prisoners, and then like the cheerleaders showed up to start like taking their clothes off. I mean, like dancing or whatever. It's like, I don't know. I don't think these things would work. Or like, how many times does Archie start basically some form of the KKK, like with little Klan people running around? I don't know. Like, they had their fun, but I haven't gotten into it.
Yeah. But like, so Stations 11 was like on a bunch of people's lists saying you should really watch it. And I guess I've been burned by campaigns they're designed to get you to think something's good. And you watch it, you're like, what is this? There's like, there are the invisible marketing hands always pushing us towards stuff. So I kind of rejected it. And I kind of agree with you. Like, it's a slow burn. You got to like take a moment to get used to the narrative style, and you're in a pandemic due to a viral outbreak, and there's a viral outbreak. Like, who wants to watch this?
That was fun.
I'm living it, and once it connects with you, once its gears start working, I couldn't watch it fast enough. And talk about sticking a landing. Like,
yeah, that ending was great.
That ending made me feel like, you said you cried. Yeah. Like, I definitely was like, oh my God, I'm so connected to this. And like, I always like leave my body for a second where like, I'm watching a flat screen where a bunch of actors are saying words and there's sound and music. That's it. And like, that's the magic of it. Like, I care about this, like, I'm like, if she doesn't, spoilers, I'm not really going to spoil it, but like, if she doesn't run into him, like, I'm going to lose my mind. And, they're kind of teasing that they're not going to see each other. And then they do. And I'm like, holy crap. I just got to chill just like talking about it, which is like,
yeah. In the book, they actually never meet up again. It's like it's one of those situations where the movie, I mean, the TV series is better than the book, which rarely happens. And then how they use Shakespeare. They made me like Shakespeare. And we're like, I'm normally on the fence, like, oh, this is good stuff. But like, it made me really interested because they made Shakespeare relevant as they were telling a story.
Yeah.
Because they were acting scenes that were relevant to what was happening to the characters and how they were feeling. You're like, I knit you from this world, or when they're talking about basic. Well, this is the end. I don't care about spoiling. It's all on you guys for not. It's been like 3 years now. Like they're talking about how like there's the betrayal, like the dad dies, Hamlet's there, and the son is basically asking, "Did you ever even miss my father?" And that like it's a crux of why they are all mad at each other. And he pulls a knife out and he's asking that question. He's like, "No, I loved him too." And it's like, so it's interesting that you have this story going on. Then you have the story of Shakespeare, and they're echoing each other in a very beautiful way. Yeah,
Shakespeare,
I was marveled by that.
It needs help. Like it is so stuck in its language and stuck in often layered, complex plots that it's like it's hard to watch. Like I don't think there's actors love it because there are great roles, and academics love it because you're talking about history and like, look at this language. What does this line mean? But like as an audience member, I've struggled to like, wow, I really loved that. Like watching Laurence Olivier's Henry V, which is supposedly like the best filmed version. I'm like, yeah, it's good, but it's hard to connect to that emotion sometimes. Like the actors are doing it, and you're like, wow, this is a great scene, but you're constantly. It's almost like you're listening to a foreign language. Like have you ever watched
it is a weird language.
You've watched a foreign movie without the subtitles and try and I'm trying. It's like when I'm on a plane and I'm watching a movie on someone else's seat. I can't hear it. I'm like, oh, I'm going to try and figure out what's going on.
But the language is different. Like I think most teachers, like whenever a teacher was telling me about it, it's like, give it like a couple of scenes and stop trying to pay attention, and it'll snap to for you. But in terms of for your podcast, what were some of the things that you drew from? Like we're talking about these different shows and how they, like in this case, draw from Shakespeare. Were you looking at other audio dramas? And if so, like what did you get from them when you were pulling in to plan out your own?
It started from this movie idea. So it was like this big, sprawling, multi-layered, multiple character cast system in this bunker. And since we decided to make it into a podcast, we just honed in on one character within that massive world. Because I'm like, you can't cut from him to her and then this other story. Like you couldn't do Lord of the Rings as an audio podcast. It's just, there's too many characters. You couldn't follow it. Even with a narrator, you'd be like, where am I? Who's talking? So I'm trying to remember like an influence of another pod. I mean, I love scripted podcasts, but I strangely, I liked Homecoming, which has nothing to do with what I'm with what Subterra is about. But I just thought the acting was sublime in that one. And you can't go wrong with Catherine Keener.
I think Sublime is a audio drama too.
And Sublime, it's also was a band from Long Beach.
Yeah, well, it doesn't sound like you like. Sometimes people, when they're making something, they gather a bunch of resources. Kind of like when they're writing a paper, they grab a bunch of resources to start percolating before they sit down a paper and start writing out what the story is. It sounds like you just were naturally enjoying content, and then you sat down and you wrote something. You wrote it out, in terms of just like the staging of it.
I think because scripted podcasts was something new for me, and since I didn't know how long the pandemic was going to go on, so I had unlimited time. I didn't want to say, oh, okay, well, it's a little bit of Game of Thrones and it's a little bit of, some obscure French sci-fi movie that Luc Besson directed with no dialogue. And it's a little bit of this. If you can ever see that movie, I don't know the name of it, but it's a really good one. The Luc Besson one has no dialogue.
Never heard of him before, so I'll check him out.
You never heard of Luc Besson?
No, I like Norwegian foreign film and an American film, and then if it's translated into English, then it's fine in terms of any film, like Miyazaki or Studio Ghibli.
He did The Fifth Element. That's like his.
Oh, that one. That's a nice movie.
Yeah,
it's kooky.
Yeah. I just kind of wanted to like explore and write. And so there was a lot of writing and throwing out. Like it wasn't this pressure of like, okay, what is this? What is this? And, like George Lucas took Flash Gordon serials and some Kurosawa movies and The Searchers and kind of mashed them together. But he was making like a movie on a budget that he had to get the script done and get the money. That I think what was most enjoyable for me, and it's why I tell everyone like, oh, you should try one of these, even if it's not, you don't think it's successful. I didn't know how to tell a story just with audio, so I screwed up a bunch of times. I wrote drafts and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, and like recorded stuff where I'm like, no, I did it wrong. So I didn't, it was more about like, let's just explore this world. Let's write, let's have a narrative, but like, I want to, and it definitely, as you get into the second season, like, I just want to hang, I want to be in this world. I'm in no hurry to get to the next sort of narrative peak. It's the podcast audience doesn't want something tight and fast. They're like, scenes can breathe. You can have a scene that's just a hang, that's just in a space, and because of this medium, because it's not television, and you can watch something else. I mean, obviously you can skip to another podcast, but I think while that person is walking their dog or doing laundry, they want to go away. They want to I'm doing a menial task. Take me somewhere else. I'm sitting in my car, fighting traffic. So, I long story even longer. I just tried to like figure out this new art form by not like listening to ones I like and like, all right, I'm going to emulate this. I'm like, I'm going to just make what sounds and feels right to me. I have pretty good creative instincts, I think. I mean, I'm not a genius, but when I hear something that I'm like, oh, that's good, I'm usually pretty right. And it was more just trial and error. There were definitely episodes that had to be redone or scripts that had to be rewritten, but I had that luxury because we were all sitting at home, where if you're being paid to do this and there's a lot of expectations. And I always tell people, one of the biggest nightmares you ever go through is when you're driving to work and you see the poster for the thing that you're working on. You're like, we're not done. We're not going to be available. It's not going to be done by March 15th. Like, stop promoting it. Like once the train leaves the station, you have to make stuff for people to consume. But because of this weird period in the Earth's and humanity's existence where we all just took a pause, I kind of was like, all right, I want to stretch some new muscles and explore and experiment. And that's why I tell people like, there's no rules to scripted podcasting. No one has cracked it. It's like endlessly evolving, and it rewards real creativity. So you don't need to like listen to something that I did and then go, oh, I like that, I'll emulate that. Like, no, just do whatever. So
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Then when it comes to the writing component, it's just isolating down on that. Did you, because I'm used to this idea that, like a TV series or like Welcome to the Night Vale, for instance, they have like a set time that they're going to write for each one, but yours are quite variable in that amount, like in that regard. Did you write each episode discreetly, or did you write the whole series and then break it up into segments? Like how did that work in terms of just the writing, and then also the logic of not having a uniform time structure?
The first season was written week to week, just because we decided that was what we were going to do, and
that's fun.
That it was more to keep the energy up and keep us excited. And so we'd finish editing one and publish it and then go, all right, now what happens? And I really enjoyed that. It was like, working on a soap opera or something where it's just churning. And the second season, we wrote them all and had a table read and then rewrote and like minor adjustments while I'm recording, but it was pretty much all written before I hit record. And it was a very different experience, but now we had a bunch more actors and the world was bigger and we couldn't, wait, didn't I say X and now I'm saying Y? Like, it all needed to like follow some sort of logic. And in terms of time, that's a real tender sore spot for me from TV, which for some reason, for thousands of years, TV was either 30 minutes or 60 minutes. And 30 minutes were comedies and 60 minutes were dramas. And it's like, what? Why? Why not a 30-minute drama or a 60-minute comedy? And it's all economic reasons. And everyone in the movie business follows this 3-act paradigm. There are 3 acts in every movie. The first act sets up the stuff. There's an inciting incident, and then there's a plot twist in page 30, and then there's act 2. And then act 3 is where the battle happens. And if you're a Marvel movie, that's when the sky beam goes up and all the robots come and Thor smashes them all. And I've always been like, yeah, but Shakespeare wrote 5 acts. All his plays are 5 acts. So why can't a movie have 5 acts? Well, no, movies must have 3 acts. We decided, like, but who? Mm-hmm. There's just like that. The herd mentality, like this is the way we've always done it. I'm like, well, Shakespeare didn't do 3 acts. He did 5. Every play is 5 acts. And so I've always been like, a show should be as long as it needs to be. Like there's no, well, is it a half hour or is it an hour? Like, well, why can't it be 45 minutes? Like what's, and so I think when we were writing them, we were less concerned about, obviously in the podcast world, there's no formats. There's no 30-minute, 60-minute. And I just kind of wanted, I wanted them, I never want to bore the audience. And I always want them leaving, wanting a little more. So I would just listen to them and I'm like, and it's done. Like that's a show for me. Like songs aren't the same amount of time, you listen to a rap album or a rock album, the song lengths are all different. Like, so I'm sort of the mindset of who cares how long something is. And it's the first question my wife asks about any movie. How long is the movie? And I say, do you know the guy Neil Breen, that director who makes those crazy bad movies? He's kind of like a Tommy, like a Tommy Wiseau. You like the movie The Room. I know Tommy Wiseau. Yeah. The Room is like 90 minutes long. It is the longest 90 minutes of your life. It is so bad. It's enjoyably bad, but you can watch an amazing 2.5-hour movie that doesn't feel like it. And you can watch an 80-minute movie that's really badly done that just feels like an eternity is passing. So it's a little trick I do when I like watch a cut or an edit of something. They're always like showing you a little time code of how long it is. And I'm like, to take that down. I don't want to, I watch it, make my little notes. And then I say, that felt about X amount of minutes. And if it's a good show, it's under. They're like, oh, I say, it feels like was that about 30 minutes? They're like, actually is 48. Like, oh, it feels like 30, which to me is like, oh, good. It's not dragging. And I have watched some really bad shows I've worked on where I'm like, was that over an hour? And they're like, no, it was 40 minutes. Like, oh, it felt long, So there's like an internal clock you have when you watch something, How long is Star Wars? I have no idea. Is it 3 hours, 2 hours, 90 minutes? I don't care. All I know is, they're going to be in the trash compactor at this point, and that's when the story takes a turn and this and that. Like, I don't, I just don't subscribe to like putting a time limit on something. Like, if it's too long, all Transformers movies, God love them. God love Michael Bay. He's trying, he's blowing up, more explosions per minute than anyone else, but they feel like an eternity.
I feel like the Transformers movies are great propaganda for America. That's what I feel like they are. There's so many, like a guy in a beat up pickup truck driving right next to a train in a cornfield. Then he, like 2 minutes later, like almost like he's sitting on his balcony while drinking a Pabst Blue Ribbon or something, and he's looking at the sunset. And if an eagle flew in there, it'd be like too iconic. They feel like such great, like just propaganda for America. Like it's just such patriotism in those movies.
He's a commercial director, and they feel like commercials, but like you never get to like. There's a guy driving in a truck, and he's got a dog, and he's got an American flag, and he's heading to work, and he's soldering something, and then he goes home and has a beer on the porch, and you're like, and the ad is for this truck or life insurance, or it never gets to like the product.
There was a scene where I think it was like the Cade Yeager ones where they crash something like a Budweiser truck, and he literally opens up the Budweiser, drinks it, and then throws it at the guy. It's like, I wonder who sponsored or funded this movie. You
got to give it to Michael Bay. He leans into it.
He knows his stuff.
We got to have a product placement. Like, all right. Well, Mark Wahlberg is going to crack a beer, drink it, and then hit someone with it. Like, at least he goes for it.
Are you ever gonna monetize or do like a Kickstarter or something to really expand your podcast, or like do other things like that? Because it does seem that you've really enjoyed having such complete creative control, like not someone up in network like poking you in the head, and bothering you, or a poster going up before you're ready and stuff like that. Which, and on the other side, you also aren't, it doesn't take you so long to get something done that people get mad at you, like Patrick Rothfuss or something that has, or like George R. Martin that maybe won't ever put out their next book.
Knock on wood. I hope he is. It's funny because old habits die hard. And so I've shared it with people who are industry people. And the first question out of their mouth is, have you written, is it a pilot? Have you got a script? And I'm like, no. And they're like, oh. I think very early on, there was a couple of companies that were sniffing around and they're like, come in and pitch it. And I have decided, no, like I'm never going to monetize it. I don't need to make money off of it. I make it because I love making it. And I'm very happy when people reach out and say, oh my God, I had a great time, and get to the surface, ace, or whatever happens in the story. No spoilers. So that to me is like worth it outside of advertising. But in terms of like making it into something else, my strategy is to just keep making it. And I don't want to go to pitch. I don't want to go to Netflix and say, we got a show and it's this and it's sci-fi and it's young and it's got a robot. I want to build an audience. And if a Netflix comes to me and says, yeah, we've noticed you got this audience, I would consider it. But it's really, having made so much stuff that doesn't connect with people, and having made a lot of stuff just for money that people always wanted me to talk about. And I say, I just needed money. I don't care about that thing. Like, I care about this thing. People always ask, what's the best thing you've made? I'm like, oh, it's Subterra, 100%. Like that's the best thing I've done. So just like, I want to honor that and keep, there are people downloading it, listening to it, and starting at episode 1 and going to the final episode of the second season. And so I just want to keep doing that for them. I keep wanting to, continue. We're writing the next season right now. And I just, the instinct is, well, let's exploit it across multiple platforms. And I'm like, why? Well, like, can it just be a thing where it is? I mean, I know everyone wants to get super rich, but there are points when it's like, maybe I should just make stuff just to make stuff, maybe. I think a plushie though would be pretty cool of the dog. If you had like a plushie of the dog or something. I know that's like, maybe you donated it all to a cause you like, so it's not in that way. But I think if you were to merch something up, I would be cool if you had like a little plushie. I'd give it away. Like, I'm like, it brings me so much joy to make it, and it brings me untold joy when people connect with it and are like, I love it. And I'm like, awesome. That's all. Like, that's sort of, I tell people, like, I feel like I've gone back to film school because I'm film school educated. And then I had all these great sort of like artistic, lofty ideas. And then you get co-opted into, well, you got to kind of make it. I remember some exec at a big studio, and they were into me for something. And I was like, I want to make this great thing, these crazy big ideas. And she said, yeah, you kind of got to like do one for us first. You got to kind of like make a crappy movie or write some crap or write something that, is financially successful, but maybe isn't very good. And I was always kind of like, that's kind of sad. That's why there's a lot of sad people in this world, in the entertainment space, because they're all super talented. It's very hard, very competitive. And then they got to go make, a kind of crappy, no one cares about show. And they have to, like you have to do that to subsist and make a living. And I guess for me, I just kind of want something pure. Yeah. And yeah, I've talked to like a couple of weird, I guess like a South Korean company that wanted to do something with it. And I was like, I'm having too much fun, like building the world out and exploring and talking about it. Who cares? Like
Yeah.
Like,
do you, for the people who work with you, I don't know if you've, like have other people doing editing or whatever, but you do have other actors. Do you compensate the actors, or it's a whole volunteer thing for everybody?
They're like equity partners in it, which means nothing. I mean, like, yes, if it becomes a Star Wars, they're all going to get very rich, but most of them have done it because they want to act. And yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. Like that, like my friend who said, I don't get to act. I get to, be on the soundstage and say lines. And this guy would do like 50, 60 takes while I'm recording, the Subterra. And it's so fun. It's just freeing, it's why I tell a lot of my creative friends, like, oh, you should do one, just because the pressure of a set and making a day, and we're going to shoot this many pages, and like all these people show up, and there's men and women in shorts hanging stuff and lights, and you're like, hours go by and you're like, we've done nothing. And they're like, it's time for lunch. And you're like, we did 0 today, and it's lunchtime. And then 1:30 rolls around and you shoot for like an hour, and then, all right, we got to move on. I mean, like, you just like the amount of time that goes into getting people fed, it outweighs like just film, just shoot, just, like make stuff. And so once you remove the production element of it, I could just sit in this studio here and just play and play and play. And like, yeah. It for anyone, if you're an amateur creative, or if you're, Ryan Johnson, take a break from the Knives Out series and just make one of these and just explore, like have fun. I just, like I said, I feel like I'm back in film school again, and I'm not worried about, how is this going to be perceived by the people at the studio, the network, the platform, and oh my God, it's 6:00. We need to get all this done. Like, it's just so liberating. So, I cannot recommend it enough.
Yeah, the one thing that I thought as would be a good opportunity is that you have all this artwork on the website, the WordPress one. It'd be pretty cool if those were in the thumbnails, because you can update on like all the platforms, the different thumbnails that you have, and you have like the different characters and the different animals and the different environments already made. I think they'd be kind of nice if every now and again, or in all of them, I don't know, you could have like just like use them, because I feel like it's such a missed opportunity when it's just like a standard cover art for all of them,
right?
Versus just having like that texture of like, oh, this is this person talking, or this is the environment. Like, I think it can all be in someone's head, of course, but if you already have them done and they're really good, like the stuff that you have like on the WordPress was actually quite nice. That'd be like one piece of advice for you, but which leads into my question for you. And we've been kind of talking about it this whole time, but concretely, what would be some advice? Like, we talked about the equipment, so you just need, get a microphone, a cheap one, maybe like cheap one like this. This is like $70, like it's not that anything. And then if you're working, did you work remotely with people? And in which
Yes.
case, then what software did you use to do that? If you could just kind of like, if you were to MVP it out for like a little person out there who wants to do something like this with their friends who live a distance away, which is probably like the most cheap way to do anything because they don't even have to like use gas to get to your place and stuff like that. What advice, like how would you, what are the tools? We've already touched on it a little bit, but if we could expand on the software and stuff you use to do the recording and that type of thing, just to like wrap up this idea of like getting people more involved in this type of thing.
Yeah, the audio remotely was recorded on Audacity, which is free, and I worked with the actor on a Zoom, and they
did it locally. Then they recorded it locally and then uploaded it to you.
Yeah, the first season it was the quarantine; we couldn't all get together, so I worked with an actor via Zoom. I had him record at least 6 takes. And then I built it in, I did the editing. I did it in a Logic Pro, but Apple has GarageBand. It's not that hard to edit audio. I think what I really learned, and I just did a lot of YouTube videoing, is like a little bit of send one character to one channel or pan it to the left and pan it to the right for another character. So you watch a lot of TV or movies, there's like what they call cross coverage, where 2 people sit and talk and there's 2 over the shoulder shots of them and you bounce back and forth and you get a sense of the rhythm of a conversation. When you're listening to it, you obviously don't have those visual cues. So I used like one character in the left and one character in the right. And as they talked, and also
that's interesting.
Here's something they don't do enough in scripted podcasts: overlap the dialogue. It feels real.
Oh, it's one at a time all the time.
It's always one of the, and so when you watch
That's how a conversation works.
When you watch a badly edited movie of a conversation of 2 people talking, you'll see one person talk and then they'll cut to the other person saying their line and they'll cut back and forth, and it's awful. When you edit a scene, you'll L cut. You'll take a little bit of the audio of the person talking, and then you'll cut their audio over to the other person who's listening, and then you'll hear their response. And you'll get you'll slide the audio underneath the back and forth edits. And I use that a lot in the later season because I feel like it feels real. I didn't have the actors in the room at the same time. So it's like, I say a line, then I say a line, then she says a line. Like, you want it to feel like a conversation. So I really recommend mashing that audio on top of each other and have people talking at the same time and interrupting each other. I edited it on Logic Pro and I scored the show myself. I'm not a musician, but I know like a little bit of music theory, and score is super important. And also at the same time, I mean, you can get, you can find public domain stuff, or you can also score it yourself. But I listened to a radio play of a Neil Gaiman book, The Sandman, and it was wall-to-wall score. It was just classical music from the second it started, and it drove me crazy. It was too much. So this is another thing that I've learned is sometimes don't have any music, and that can like really accent an intense moment where you've just had music the whole way through. Like, drop it out and then like let somebody say something and let that sit there. I found that like really powerful to not have what they call wall-to-wall music. And there's plenty of sites where you can get sound effects, but going back to my little dumb anecdote at the beginning where the actor had his dog nearby and it shook its head and I got to cover that jingling sound. I built a room tone for this space, and it was super important.
How do you do that? Just as a quick aside, how do you build a room tone for people like listening who are just like, some people are completely fresh to this idea? Yeah,
okay. No, that's fine, because you and I are talking and there's no room tone. So it's, if we were editing this conversation, we would sit quietly in this room and record a minute of just the sound of the room. They do this all in movies, and rooms have sound in them, even though you can't really hear it, but if you watch a movie without any room tones, something is weird. Something, what's going on? Like it feels wrong. And so to cover that sound of the dog's collar, I just went to YouTube. People have uploaded room tones for an apartment, a house, or whatever. I think in one of the early scenes, he goes to like a marketplace. So I found the sound of a real marketplace and laid it in there, but also just like a complete track of just tone. Like this character is underground in a massive, 10-mile bunker. That's got to have like a consistency to it. It's got to have when you're in there, it sounds like something. Like I've been watching these videos of this room that people go into where it's like a completely soundproof room and you can't hear anything and they go nuts. So like we crave sound, and definitely don't skimp on that. Like think about that and think about like, okay, they're in like a little, our characters are in a tunnel. All right. So find like a tunnel sound with like water dripping, and it was like little things that I did that people are like, oh, it's like you. Oh, it sounds so good. And I'm like, I just added some room tone, but it's a audio color that you can't skip. I think it's super important. And, don't worry about length. Just keep the story moving, keep it exciting, and just experiment, like I was thinking about how podcasts are kind of like the digital video that came on in like the late 90s and sort of just changed filmmaking, like where people in the 70s and 80s shot on film, and there's a finite amount of film that you can shoot because you'll run out, like there were all these like, constraints to making something. And now you can shoot on your phone, you can shoot digitally, you can just, hit like be like David Fincher and do 1,000 takes. And I guess with that actor where we just did 50 takes, like just do it, maybe they're all exactly the same. And like, all right, I don't need to do 50 takes, but try different, I tried different variations. I would act in the scene with him. I would just get him line reads. Just create a lot of media, like just record, try. And sometimes 30 minutes into this, him doing one line, I would find this great voice cracking. And oh my God, the emotion in that little sentence that he said blows me away. So I was like, all right, it was worth spending 30 minutes of him to say like one line, which is, something like you're just not going to have that advantage when you make a movie. You're just not going to, unless you're Kubrick or David Fincher, who do hundreds of takes, and Kubrick's dead. And David Fincher has admitted he does that not for the actors, but for the craftspeople who built the set and did all this great work. And he's like, and then we shoot like 5 takes and we're like, all right, moving on. Like, no, I'm going to like,
they're going to torture us for no reason.
Yeah. So he honors the craftspeople that built this amazing world. And like, I'm going to just shoot. And so
you could just make it into a giant pit and burn it while having a drink with them at the end. Like, I don't know. That seems kind of like cruel and unusual punishment, but I guess some people would probably like Kill to work with him, I guess, because he's a good guy.
The product is good. Like the films he makes, I think are very good. So that's his process. So,
anything, I know we're coming to the end and I don't want to run over and eat up your day. So was there any other pieces of advice? I think the big thing is really just have fun with it. Try it out. The equipment, pretty straightforward. Zoom, if you're working with people over a line, to just kind of coordinate it. You can have them record it on their side with Audacity, which is where I started with my podcast as well. And now I use Adobe Premiere, which is fairly cheap, but you can't beat cheaper than free. And Audacity is pretty solid. And then experiment with anything that you want, really. And then if you put it up there, you can iteratively make it better. Because you're already on season 2. It's a little bigger, a little better. There's always little things you can tweak, like the little thumbnail thing I suggested. Like that, I think people might enjoy that. It's a little textual thing. But at the same time, like maybe you just want everyone just make their own world in their head. and just have like the soundscape be what it is. Anything besides that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really all just goes back to writing, and that's you can have all of the equipment and you can have $50,000 mics, but if your story isn't interesting, it doesn't matter, And narrative isn't just storytelling, it's about change, and it's about values, and it's about emotion, and a lot of times these things get kind of pushed to the side for the sake of action and for the sake of movement. Like Rian Johnson having a mom joke to open a Star Wars movie,
I hate that. Why'd you bring it up again?
Because I just recently rewatched it and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that. This
sucks.
I also hate in The Force Awakens when Kylo Ren gets down and he goes, "Who goes first? I go first. You go first. How does this work?" And I'm like, God damn it! Don't. It's the Marvel-ization of Star Wars. Like, you're doing bits. You're doing like a little cute.
Yeah.
Oh, this is what I'd say with my friends. Like, no, this guy's Kylo Ren. He's going to kill you. Don't say I go first. You go first. How does this work? Like, you're just Anyway, that's an aside.
Especially in Force Awakens, where he starts with literally freezing a blaster bolt in midair, which we've never seen before.
I was intrigued by that. I'm like, that's cool, but then don't do quips. But these are notes just for J.J. Abrams, so that everyone else do whatever you want. But like
a fun joke that I heard is Rian Johnson, his goal was to subvert expectations, and he subverted my expectation for having a great Star Wars experience.
Just
I tell it to the first one. Yes.
I just went through the first three a couple of weeks back. Pure joy, just like. I just, it always makes me smile. It's such good storytelling. The action is 40 years old and it still holds up. Like, that's impressive. With all the technology we have now, I can't think of an action movie outside of Fury Road that I'm like, that blew my mind. Like, I'm like, yeah, a lot of robots running around fighting, and then there's a guy drinking a Bud Light and then throwing at a guy.
I think The Thing, John Carpenter's 1984, The Thing is probably one of the other old movies. Which, I mean, I don't know.
I just saw that in the theaters a couple of months ago. You saw it
in the theater? That's awesome.
They re-released
the sound
it.
for that, where you have like the heartbeat, the soundtrack.
Yeah,
it's so compelling because the alien stuff's going on.
I saw it when I was a little kid and it blew me away. And I was like, I'm sitting there with a bunch of millennials at a movie theater in LA. And I'm like, are they gonna get this? Because it's not CGI. And the tension in the room was palpable. Like, they were freaked out. And I'm like, it's people blowing into things to make horns come out of dudes. Like, it's all practical and it doesn't look amazing, but the tension of that script and that world, you could just feel it in the room. People were like, obviously not seen it, and they're like, I don't know what's going to happen next. Where are we? I'm just as confused as these characters on the screen, and that movie is a masterpiece.
Do you think? I feel like we're getting off on a side, and I know like I have to like wrap up. But do you think McCready and Childs, or either of them, was the alien? Do you think that the alien won in the end?
There's a lot of it's funny. I showed it to my wife, and then we came home and we just watched YouTube videos about it for an hour. Like, this is now how I watch movies. I watch them and I go, okay, what are all these videos that break it down with the 50 things you didn't see? McCready is Kurt Russell, right? And
yep.
The other
Childs
is Keith David, I think is his name.
Yeah, he's in Community. I like that TV show.
Yeah. Oh, that's why. Yeah, because he's in Rick and Morty too. He's the president. Yeah, is the voice of the president. Okay, so Childs and McCready are in the broken craft at the end. The whole place is on fire. I
think McCready has a flamethrower, and Childs just kind of hanging out.
McCready is drinking something, which some people say
something. Yeah,
some people say it might have been a Molotov cocktail, and he gives it.
Yeah.
He's not drinking it. He gives it to Childs, who drinks it, and that is tipping us off to, oh, he's an alien, because he would go, this doesn't taste like scotch. This is gasoline. But if you watch the very end of it, McCready's, you can see his breath. They're outside, and it's freezing cold. And then they cut to Childs. You cannot see his breath. There's no vapor coming out of his mouth. And that blew my wife's mind. I'm like, he's clearly the alien. She's like, that is so subtle. And I'm like, yeah, that wouldn't work today. And it's probably why the movies wasn't financially successful, because they don't hang a lantern on, this is the alien, he won. Like, you really have to watch it. And I've seen the movie.
He won in the long term though, on the residuals. He probably makes all right off the Blu-rays and stuff.
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah. But I think McCready knows that Childs is the alien, and he's like, let's just see what happens. I think he says, like, let's just see what happens. Like, that's the last line. What a masterpiece.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, and the documentary behind them are really good too. We talked about Star Wars, and then I will ask you for book recommendations, because I don't want to get you in trouble with anything else you got going on tonight. But who do you think the Mandalorian is? I asked this to people, and they don't realize that there's some subjectivity to it, potentially.
Who the Mandalorian is?
Yeah, who do you think the Mandalorian is? Like, when they say the Mandalorian, the TV show, who do you think it's about?
Is that a trick question? I don't.
I have an opinion that it isn't the obvious answer. Basically, when I ask people, they always come to this. They're like, "What are you talking about, Lowell? It's clearly Din Djarin." I don't think it's Din Djarin.
No. All right. No. I'm very interested. Tell me, what's your theory?
I think Grogu's the Mandalorian, and Din Djarin is basically Obi-Wan Kenobi raising him up. If especially given the fact that Grogu's coming back for the third season,
right? If
they would have I actually think it would be really cool if he went off with Ahsoka, and he was kind of like that cute ball that helps lift up new series, like keep people interested. I thought that would be kind of funny. But the fact that he's coming back for the third season, and if you listen to the trailer, like, he's constantly teaching Grogu what it means to be a Mandalorian, and Grogu's getting to the point where he's starting to develop skills again. I think this is my guess. I think Din Djarin's going to try to unite the tribes again. He's going to fail about the time that Grogu's like mentally like 17, 18 years old. And then he's going to fail and be betrayed, probably by like Bo-Katan, because she likes creating civil wars. He's going to die, and then Grogu's going to go on like this like quest, like not necessarily revenge or whatever, but there's going to be a lot of stuff being resolved there. And he's going to be the one that wields the Darksaber, because he has all the Force potential to do it. And he's going to unite the tribes and bring them all together. He's going to be the one Mandalorian to actually bring everyone back together. Din Djarin's Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he's kind of like that mentor that dies. I think this story is entirely about Grogu.
That is a wild theory, but it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I pointed out to people, and they're like, at first they were like, "What the heck are you talking about?"
No.
But if you watch the whole thing with that idea in mind, the Mandalorian's not inherently Din Djarin. If anything, like I got my wife to watch the whole thing, and she's like, "No, it's Grogu. Grogu's the Mandalorian."
All right, now I need to rewatch it. We're gonna have to cut this short.
Yeah, I'll leave you with the last question then, because I know you're being polite and not yelling at me for going over. What are some? But you're gonna say something. Sorry.
No. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. Okay. What are some books or movies basically you get to own the listener's weekend outside of listening to your content, and it has to be at least one book, because we love reading. But what is one book, and then like Saturday night, what are you having us watch?
Okay, I'm reading it for the 8 billionth time, and it is a book that has a lot of interesting story around the writing of it and what happened to the author, and it has influenced a lot of people, and it is the only book that has made me laugh out loud while reading. Like, I've read a lot of books, and I'm like, that's funny. This one, I laugh like I'm bawling laughing, and it is called A Confederacy of Dunces, and it is written by a gentleman named John Kennedy Toole, who wrote a book when he was 16 called The Neon Bible, never got published, and then wrote this book, and it never got published, and then he killed himself, and his mom fought for years to get it published. It did. It won a Pulitzer, and it's considered one of, the great American novels. It's set in New Orleans, which is a city I love. I was just revisiting it, and clearly, like Larry David and the Seinfeld, the way those later episodes, seasons where the stories all fold into each other. They're all like 4 wild stories that all connect. That's the structure of this book. And the main character is the funniest character I've ever read. He is a morbidly obese, angry, overeducated snob who lives with his mom because he can't work, which are like right off the bat, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been there. And he goes on this madcap adventure that's just insane. So if you've never read Confederacy of Dunces, they've been trying to make it into a movie, and thank God they haven't, because it's too perfect. Like they were going to make it in the 80s with John Belushi and somebody else. And there's all this tragedy around, like people keep dying who are attached to it, but there's some, like Tulane University owns the book and they won't release it. And I think Steven Soderbergh was going to make it into a movie. And I read the script and I was like, it's not as good as the book. So if you want to laugh and read about a great American city, New Orleans, read Confederacy of Dunces.
So I haven't heard that before, so I'm going to check it out. And then, do you want us to be watching anything this Saturday? Everyone listening has to listen to you, so it could be heinous. Hopefully not too heinous, actually.
Watch this Saturday. I have already gone through this whole season of this show. It is on FX or Hulu or whatever they're called now, and you've probably all heard of it, and you've probably heard enough people telling you to watch it. But I'm going to be another guy because I'm such a fan of it. It's called The Bear. And
I watched the first couple episodes.
Yeah, keep watching it. Talk about stick the landing.
Yeah, my problem with it's like the type of content where they set up things that aren't resolved immediately or like at all in the episode. And so I'm constantly thinking like, will they pay it off? Will they pay it off? Will they pay it off? And there's so many TV shows and movies that just never paid off. So it's like, oh, I don't know. I'll go watch something else. I got like 4 episodes in. It's like, I don't know if they're going to pay this off. But if you say it's going to be paid off, I'm gonna watch it.
They're only half hours, and
yeah,
the penultimate episode, spoilers, is all one shot. The entire episode, like it's
crazy,
and it's a masterpiece. And they stick the landing. Like what's going on with. They're planting seeds along the way of what happened with his brother, and it is completely paid off. It is apparently a comedy, but it's not that funny. It's very funny, anxiety inducing. I don't know what it is. Like I don't have a term to like, oh yeah, it's a blank. It's a
real shop too in Chicago.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's
real place. You can visit it.
It is about a Michelin-starred super famous chef who returns to Chicago to take over his brother's Italian beef sandwich shop after his brother died of a drug overdose or suicide. I can't remember. And if you told me that's a good show, I'd say, no, that's okay. That sounds terrible. And sort of like to what you said, they don't pay things off like a normal show. Like spoilers, they accidentally give kids a bunch of Xanax at a party and they all pass out. And I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be, and it's like, that happened. So you have to get into the rhythm of the storytelling, and it's worth it alone just to watch that 7th episode. That's all one shot. It is just like, what are they doing? And just in terms of, like, I keep talking about emotion and caring. There's a character in it that's just trying to make donuts, and he really wants to make good donuts. And I just remember late in the season, I'm yelling at my TV, like, that better be good. Like, I'm so connected with this guy. It breaks every single rule. It should not work. It's very low stakes. There's not, the planet is not in peril if they don't make a perfect sandwich. Like, it's very it shouldn't work. And I think it's like one of the best shows I've seen in a decade. So please give it just a few more.
Yeah. My problem, I think the thing that ruined it was that there's commercial breaks, because like I think it's like my wife's sister or something. We get it from them. Share passwords.
I'll give you my Hulu password so you don't have to watch commercials. I want you to enjoy it. I love it so much. I want you to be like, oh yeah. I totally know what you're saying when you're watching something spectacular and then it's like a commercial for Mazda and you're like,
I hate commercials. I hate them. Yeah, I hate every single one of them.
They break the
I've ad block and everything.
Yeah. I will give you my you know what? I'll get you DVDs of it. I will mail them to you. I want you to watch it the way you're supposed to watch it.
I'll find a way, or I'll just tolerate it. It's not. I'm going to watch it the Saturdays. It's all good.
Yeah, if you get to 7, you will get to 8, because once you watch 7, you're like, I gotta see the finale. And I remembered Station 11 and how I felt in the finale, and same thing with the bear. So yes, it is. I think it's presented as like, it's kind of like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but at a Chicago meat sandwich place. It is not. It is like something.
It's very dour,
completely new, but it starts very dark and very anxiety inducing when you're in that kitchen, and by the end, you're like rooting for everybody. So I was blown away by it. I didn't want to like it, and then I'm one of those people now that tell you, have you seen The Bear? And you go,
yeah. Well, I'm going to watch it, and everyone listening, check it out as well. As per everyone's implied agreement in listening this long, you have to watch this now. Yeah, I think it's fun. It's just like, hey, you could take our Saturday, But at the same time, if I could ask you one more bonus question, you've basically given a lot of your knowledge over this conversation. What do you need? What do you need help with? Is there something, even if it's just like, hey, here's my newsletter on this thing, like, you can check it out. But is there something that you're working on, a problem that you're going through that maybe someone listening can help? Maybe even me. I don't know. You never know.
I think I need help. I need help promoting my podcast, and that's marketing is something that I've not been involved in, and there's always like another wing of a place you're working for that deals with that, and I'm just it's not something I'm good at. It's not something, and like I said, I care so much about it. I'm not trying to make money. I want people to hear it so that they get the pleasure that I get putting into it, and I am not good at making amplifying the content out into the world. I'm learning and I'm getting better, and I'm social media this and ad buy that, and I'm trying. But if someone's like a marketing genius and they're like, this is what you should do, I would be all ears.
Yeah, you don't have a YouTube channel, right?
I'm sorry?
You don't have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, we do. Yes.
Oh, okay, I missed that. I was going to say, Mike Duncan's Revolutions, he doesn't have a YouTube channel, so people literally upload his audio into a playlist, and I listen to that because I don't like clicking through each individual one. But each individual one of those has like 100,000 views.
Wow, that's great.
And it's just a little thumbnail. I was going to suggest that. Given the length of them, you could have like some shorts or like TikToks and stuff made out of it. I don't have TikTok, but I know people that like that type of thing. How would you get it out there? Well, you can always pick a fight with someone. Apparently, that's really good. I was reading a book about called The 50th Law of Power, but with like 50 Cent or something. It's like Conquering Fear.
Yeah, is it based by the guys who wrote the 48 Laws of Power?
Yeah.
I love that. It's an amazing book.
But yeah, it's about conquering fear, which doesn't talk about what I'm talking about now. But they basically say like pick a fight with someone, and I've thought about this for a while. Like, what if I find another podcaster or someone, and then we work out us fighting to online to get things bigger. Like, if they're starting out.
I'll pick a fight with you next time I come on.
Yeah, we gotta work out a soundbite where we're just cursing each other to the camera, and I'll put that in the first 2 seconds.
But
that. It'd be clickbait. It'd be clickbait though, because we'd have to have like a really contentious conversation. Like I say, hey, what do you think the Mandalorian is? Like, you're stupid, lol. Of course it's Din Djarin.
Oh, I love that. That's a good podcast idea.
Yeah, we just fight each other the entire time.
It's like wrestling, but for your ears.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of scripted, like wrestling for your ears.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
I
you
like
can pick a fight with someone, especially if you know a lot of people and they're bigger than you. That helps.
It's
so if you
kinda
know
like
someone who's bigger than you, have them fight you.
It's like that Monty Python sketch where the guy goes in for an argument and he just is like, no, you're not. Like we could just, it's a podcast where people have come to get into a fight. Yeah. Oh, I love that. That is a great idea. Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome back on anytime you want. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today with the Learn with Lowell show. Check us out at learnwithlowell.com. Anywhere podcasts can be found, subscribe. Tell me what you thought of this episode. Check us out on YouTube in particular. It's a new thing I'm doing. Timestamps and links are in the show notes. Thank you for coming, and I hope every one of you found something today that you're curious about to learn more about, and you'll go out and be curious and learn something new. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.